Chigbo, I would like you to start by telling me your professional academic resume.
Thank you first for having me. I'm happy to be part of this. Um, I'm an associate professor of English at the University of Winnipeg here in Canada. Um, and I did my PhD in English at the University of Manitoba, did my master's and bachelor's at Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria in literature. So in Nigeria, literature is what we call English here. And my area of interest in terms of research and teaching is essentially African literature, but I teach literature generally. I specialize in studying literatures of genocides and mass atrocities, or if you like, mass violence and wars. That's the short of it.
That's an interesting one because at this time there seems to be too many wars everywhere. But just we're gonna touch on those areas. I did a little research about you, and as I can see here, it says that you are a recipient of several prestigious awards, including a Vernier Canada Graduate Scholarship for your doctoral dissertation at the University of Manitoba and J.B. and Maurice Shapiro Fellowship at the United States. And you also serve on the advisory board of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. This is fantastic. It is inspirational. You've made your community proud. You've also made me proud. I would like to ask you, looking back in all of these achievements and these awards in the United States and everywhere, how do all of these things make you feel, Professor?
Of course, they make me feel happy. Right? I'm happy to have been acknowledged in that way. But more seriously, I think I'm grateful that I had that kind of support for my PhD program. In the way I never expected, actually. It's sometimes you are doing stuff and someone says, "Oh, that is great. We want to support you with this amount." So that acknowledgement can help boost your morale and give you confidence that you are doing well. But beyond that is that you feel you need to do more. Sometimes you feel like you've been giving quite a lot, and you've not matched what you've received, and that you need to do more. So it's a challenge at the same time as it's a good acknowledgement.
Yeah, I know you're actually a source of inspiration to younger ones. And the younger ones listening to all of this, University of Ife, University of Manitoba, and currently a professor with University of Winnipeg, looking at you, they see all this success. Were you born, were your parents billionaires from Nigeria that made you achieve all of these things?
I believe if they were, I wouldn't be in Winnipeg for sure.
That's how we look at it. Tell me about your growing up. What was it like?
Yeah, that's a very long story that I think would make up to 10 novels. But I was born in the old Anambra in Enugu state, and I was raised by a single mom who was a teacher throughout. So I grew up in a family of teachers, essentially. So that's where I believe I picked up interest in teaching.
Yeah.
And my mom was actually the most dedicated teacher I ever know because of her commitment to the work. We throughout my elementary school years, we went to school 5:30 a.m. Not missing it once. Every day we got to school 5:30 a.m. So that took a lot of dedication, getting kids to wake up at 4 and getting everyone ready and all that. But that was the kind of commitment she had. And we moved to Anambra when they did the state creation, and we became non-indigens in Enugu. So we had to move back to Anambra, where our hometowns were. And then, that was where I took interest in storytelling, folk tales because Enugu was more of cosmopolitan, urban city thing, so we didn't have access to, but moving to Anambra, to Ogidi, Chinua Achebe's hometown, I met.
I can see the connection.
Yeah, which was where my mom was posted, to a primary school there. So I met. We first lived in the hinter parts of that place, because we couldn't get a good accommodation early. But living there was really fantastic. So I was introduced to what we call traditional cultural practices of the place, the festivals, the masquerades, storytellers who told lots of fantastic folk tales. So I took interest and I would retell those stories. But then I didn't know I wanted to be a medical doctor because my middle name is Arthur, which was the name of the doctor who delivered me. And I heard he did it for free. So the payment was to give me his name. But a lot of things happened throughout. We didn't have money to pay for science subjects. During my secondary school, I went to Dennis Memorial Grammar School, which was a prestigious part mission, part public school in Onitsha. And I was in the boarding school as well. Very good school with a lot of colonial history.
So Dennis Memorial folks listening, shout out to you guys.
The Old Boys Association. So that was great. But then to be in the sciences, you needed to pay 1,000 naira for each of the science subjects extra to be able to succeed in sciences, and there was no way we could afford that. So those of us who didn't have the resources were all sort of pushed into the arts. Interestingly, there was no literature teacher at the time. So I think I did literature twice in secondary school. So it's in the university I studied literature actually. But I took interest in just reading books, read Chinua Achebe, read poems, English poems, and read plays, Shoyinka's works. And the time I was going to do JAMB, my mom said, well, it looks like it's law. I felt, well, I don't think I like law. They lie a lot. And I had to manipulate my way around it. Also because I knew she didn't have the money for law, I was going to get admission at Nnamdi Azikiwe University then, and they were asking for 250,000 for admission. Not because you didn't pass. They were doing this thing. They needed to get money to develop the school and all that. That was in the early 2000s, I think 2003-04. But I also took, I put law as my second choice anyway. So I made English my first choice and chose Obafemi Awolowo University. And I didn't know about the university at all because I just saw it on TV and said, oh, this looks lovely. I love the campus. That was just my connection to the place, and I chose it. And luckily I was picked. And that was how I went to Ife.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah,
very inspirational as
Ife, well. Ife was I think I'm grateful that I went to that university. It's one of the best universities, at least then, to be at. It's the culture there. That was where I grew my confidence, believed in my ability to do certain things. When I finished there, I had some negative experiences that would have made me go elsewhere. But because of my love for the university, I stayed back and did my master's there. And those horrible experiences continued and got really dangerous for me. And I felt I had to leave because of, at that point, I was beginning to take interest in studying Biafra and the history of Biafra. And some of the professors didn't like that. So Chinua Achebe's last book came out around that time. There Was a Country, the memoir. And my review of the book and public engagements got me in some trouble. So So I knew if I wanted to do a PhD in something related to that, I had to leave Nigeria. So
Interesting. So you kind of touched on my next question, trying to link up, after you graduated from the University of Ife for your bachelor's. I'm trying to understand what was that connection that made you to sort of think, oh, okay, the next journey in my life is to go abroad to study or go for my master's or PhD and the rest of it. What was that connection, sort of?
by the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I already knew I wanted to be a professor, right? So it was at Ife I came fully into the awareness that I had to be a professor. There was just nothing else that I found really interesting.
Did anybody influence you to think that way, or?
Couple of influences here and there,
Okay.
but I also had fantastic mentors. One was Professor Chigbo Arthur Anyaduba. He's retired now at Ife. Powerful mentor. He taught you and you don't know you are being taught. That's the kind of influence he could wield on students. And we all loved him so much. So I felt, I could be this kind of professor. I love this. But beyond my mentors, it's also I taught a lot. I was a student teacher throughout my undergrad days from my first year, actually. So, and I was an average student in my secondary school. I wasn't brilliant. I wasn't the kind of student you would. I mean, some we used to make jokes now about it, but then it wasn't funny. People looked at my face and they felt, this guy is brilliant. And then they befriended me only to realize they're actually better than me and they moved away. Right? That was my experience in secondary school. But by the time I was finishing secondary school, something changed. I think it was a motivation. Like I failed a class in secondary school. That's how average I was. But I got to the university and my first year I was among the very best. And it was strange to me to experience that success. So, but I never I never slid from then. I just maintained the momentum and continued. I was also very disciplined in what I did then. I could read for 3 days in a row, nonstop, right, in class. And that was scary even to myself, but let alone some other students who felt, go find the life. What are you doing? You are reading all these literatures for who, right? But it was fun. If you allowed me that opportunity to be able to do that. So by the time I was finishing, I wanted to be a professor. So I knew I had to do my master's. I was supposed to make a first class, but ethnicity and all the tribalist thing happened. They brought my grade down. That was why I said, negative experience. I didn't want to go back. But because I had people like Chigbo Arthur and a couple of other professors there who felt, why do you think about grades? It doesn't matter. Just do what you want to do, right? So I went back after my youth service. I did my youth service in Yenegua, and I taught in a school as well. Worked with fantastic students. Many of them are professionals now in different parts of the world. So I went back, did my master's, and so it was during my master's that Achebe's book came out, and and I had problem with some professors, and my results disappeared, and Canada wasn't actually my first choice. I was going to Germany actually to do the research. That was where I got my admission, but because I couldn't find my results, I lost that admission, because that admission was fully funded PhD from your first year. But the admission I got in Canada was part scholarship. But when I came in, I was lucky and applied to a couple of opportunities, and I was getting them, and I felt, that this is great. And it's good to be supported like that and to have money while doing the PhD. It made a lot of things very easy.
Wow. You see, in the Chronicles of a Professional, part of what we do is to have people like you to share these stories, and these stories go on to inspire younger ones. Listening to you, honestly, it's very inspirational. Looking at all the challenges and where you are today, I mean, there are a lot to learn in there. Now, a lot of younger ones would have the opportunity to watch this podcast with you, and they will listen to your story from a town in Ogidi to becoming a professor in Canada and all of those things. Some people are also going through this. What message do you have for people going through this and aspiring to also be great or become a professor in the future?
Mm. That's I mean it's more of a know what you want, and be consistent. Don't let things that don't actually matter define your deeper convictions. I believe I already knew I just love teaching. I love telling stories. I loved using stories to teach and interact with people. That was my own life and how I grew up. And that was what I found joy doing. So even when I got good jobs, it wasn't as though I didn't feel pressured to live that dream and seek something else. There were times I felt, why not apply to this oil company? They are hiring, who knows? Why not apply to this?
You stayed within your passion.
Yeah, so I got some positions in Lagos at some point. My very first day at the job, that was before I started my master's, because Ife and strike, you don't know when you're going to start. So I just went there and I felt, but what are you doing here? Just go back. You already know what you want. And I walked away from the job and told them I wasn't going to continue. And went to school. It felt like I was a fool then, like I didn't know what I was doing. But I just knew it wasn't just there for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So being consistent, I think, understand what really you believe you can do so well and it's not work for you. And stay consistent, it will work. Right?
I like the message. Staying consistent. That's very powerful. So let's look at your area, genocide and mass atrocities. To a layman, what exactly does that mean?
Well, that's complex, but it's not complicated like that. It's straightforward. It's human beings killing human beings, right? Why do human beings kill others en masse, right? Why, why would someone wake up and feel, I don't like people who look like this. They are bad people. They are the problem in the world. Let's eliminate them. If we wipe them out, there won't be problem anymore, at least for us. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. I'm curious. I want to know why, what could make groups of people come to that sensibility that their own existence can be meaningful if they eliminate other groups, whichever way they've come to define that group, right? And it seems like the very problem of the modern world, the modern world was fashioned out of genocides and mass atrocities of people categorizing fellow human beings in different ways. That's the basis of racism. They are blacks, therefore they are not fully human beings. They are reds, they are indigenous or Indians, the various ways in which human beings categorized others in order to make killing them very easy. That's my interest. And why I'm interested in that is because of the connection of storytelling to these sensibilities. How would a very religious person, a moral person who has a family, has kids, have social connection, believe that they have to eliminate another person? Is it because they are fundamentally evil? If they are evil, they are good to their family, right? There's something else. We have to understand how human beings come to do that kind of enormous violence. So from literature, the perspective of our context of literary studies, we are looking at the ways that stories could inform perceptions, cultural worldviews, and actions, actually. How did European societies come to racialize other peoples as subhumans who could easily be eliminated without consequence? Why? At the same time as those societies were highly religious, highly moral societies, founded on strong ethical structures. How could they do that, right? How could they kill their neighbors who had been living with them for years, for centuries? Like what has happened? So yeah, that's what I'm interested in, how the kinds of stories we tell could actually inform those kinds of horrible practices. And those stories define every kind of thing we do, essentially. Our world is founded on stories. In fact, there are some scholars believe that what makes the human species very different from other species is because the human species could tell stories. Right?
Interesting.
And because we could tell stories, it means we could harness the imagination of groups of people. Use them to do things. That's how we've been able to build world, build houses. It came for us from the imagination, from stories we tell, from people imagining that there's something outside of Earth, and then we are traveling there. we imagine, we tell these stories. Or that money, for example, means something. It doesn't mean anything. It's a story we tell. The way we construct values, the way we apportion different kinds of meanings to things, they are products of storytelling.
Is there a connection with what is happening in our world today? There seems to be a lot of wars, I know if I look back history, we've always had that in the past, but maybe because I am an adult and witnessing this one, is looking more like there are too many wars everywhere. Is that part of what you're, like you made mention of wanting to know the why? The why. Why would a group of people want to eliminate the other group? Why would this, so many things.
And also the how, right?
Okay.
The why is very metaphysical, it's very difficult to answer.
Yeah.
Why? We may not know, but if we look at the how is it happening, how would a family man who is good on an average level perpetrate horrible, nasty atrocities on others? What has happened to that man? How did they come to that? So that how, we usually look at stories. If you take, for example, the last 20 years or so, the kinds of American films, war films, they are. You always find things like someone going to Afghanistan or the Middle East to wage a war on terrorists. Some stories could say, okay, yeah, they are not necessarily terrorists. I then came to a realization they are not, and so on. But the effect of such kinds of storytelling, that some people somewhere, there's something called Islamic radicalism or fundamentalism, there are terrorists and all that. Those kinds of labeling, they inform how we make sense of things, right? How we then come to relate with people, right? Or someone who has never had any interaction with me, but because I am black, they look at me and then they come to a kind of meaning about what I am. Maybe I'm inferior, I'm not good enough at what I do, right? Those are stories that shape the sensibilities. They've heard different kinds of stories in different ways of black inferiority, of Muslim radicals and fundamentalists and so on, and that informs the kinds of relationships they have with them. Of course, there are other things utilizing those kinds of stories to govern the world. That's part of what we do. So if we finish the how, but why?
Exactly.
Who is manipulating stories in this way, right? There are powerful governments, there are powerful institutions and corporations that need such stories. Why do we have many stories about Africa as a horrible place, about poverty and impoverishment and so on, when Africa is actually the richest continent in the world, right? How can people be that rich in resources and produce the poorest populations? Who is selling these stories and why, right? So that's stories are used to govern the world, govern our imaginations and sensibilities. So our work is not different from the work of doctors. I didn't become a medical doctor, but maybe we are cultural doctors actually. So we diagnose the social cultural system and look at how stories are used to cause sicknesses.
I like that connection. Yeah. So I would like to ask what are the different areas in terms of, be it specialization, be it where people who, went into the same, would end up working? Is it only in the academic world, or they can work in places, or there are specialization areas within,
I mean, scholars of literature can work anywhere. First, you can be a professor, and it's the best job in the world. And I mean it literally, it's the best job in the world. I can come back to that. But you can work anywhere. If, for example, I specialized in medical humanities, for example, it means I might be reading stories about health. And they have people who work in hospitals analyzing stories that patients tell and using those stories to understand what's happening to them. Literary scholars work a lot with psychologists as well. We work in virtually every aspect of the world in technologies. Many tech companies hire literary scholars, in order to train technology to be more humanistic and interact. A lot of tech, they tell stories. That's what they do. A lot of ads and what. So they look for people who understand the structures of storytelling
and history too.
Exactly, and how they could use that in different ways.
Interesting.
In terms of core, the media is one core place that literature folks go into, and not just as writers, but also as editors, as publishers. They work in institutions like public institutions like museums, art galleries, historical artifact people as well, even libraries. But we are so versatile that we can be in anywhere. Right? And in terms of specialization, you can specialize in anything you can connect to stories, to literature. I mean, and it's limitless.
So, where are your research interest area? This question is, a student sent it to me saying, okay, I ask professor if maybe someone wants to go for masters or whatever. What are your research interest area?
There are many research interest areas. Mine is genocide and mass atrocities in Africa, right? But it means I have to also understand, because some of those concepts didn't originate in Africa. They came from elsewhere. So if I want to understand, for example, how genocide has been used in other contexts, especially in European contexts with Jewish victims of the Holocaust and all that, I have to read widely. We generally read very widely. But coming into how you arrive at research subjects or topics or areas of interest, it's usually something about you, right?
Yeah.
If I'm reading stories and I keep seeing things about, say, love is a very fundamental human thing. But a lot of stories about love I see, they have something to do, say, with tragedy, right? How does love come into being? How do we then say this is love? It's usually when it's tested in tragic context, right? Like two lovers, and they think they are in love and so on, and then something happens and one dies and the other one dies as well. You say, oh, this is really profound love that can produce this kind of reaction from them. So over time you realize, why is love always connected to death? That's a profound research question there, because you are observing that each time I interact with love stories, there's something about death that then makes love very powerful and meaningful. Right? So why is that? You're already asking a powerful research question. So it's something about you, your curiosity. You are just not reading stories or interacting with literary materials just for fun, but something is making an impression on you, and that impression could guide you into questions. So researchers are good interrogators. They know the right questions to ask. So once you find those questions, then you're a researcher.
Yeah, absolutely. So viewers, I think Prof nailed it. So over to you if you have interest in that area. So as we wrap up, Prof, I would like to know, why is being a professor the best job on earth?
Actually, because of for me, not just that I love what I do, and I love meeting different kinds of students all the time, So unlike if you go to work, mostly you keep meeting the same kind, you are in the same kind of routine and all that. This job is so flexible, right? I don't even have to go to work, the office every day. I could just go to teach, but anywhere is my office. I could be in my house and do my work. I could go to a coffee shop, and that's where I want to work for that day. And I sit down there and I'm reading and, responding to things or writing something. Not to say the job is very difficult, because reading all the time. Constantly planning the next class, thinking of the new materials to use. You have to be up to date in terms of what people are writing and saying about what is written. But it's fun, especially if you love to do that. But I love that flexibility. I can't work from 9 to 5. I would die. I can't do that kind of work.
We've done that for years.
Yeah, I can't do that. So I love the flexibility. It allows me, even if it means I have to do work late at night or over the weekends, that flexibility also allows me to have good balance of family and work. So that's I don't know, and I can move around, meet new people, meet new students all the time with crazy ideas. Someone comes and they are reading a story you think you've already known too well, and they are saying something completely remarkably different from what you thought you knew. Mm-hmm. And that provokes new ways of looking at things.
Exactly.
That's for, I mean, it's something you feel, but why am I paid to do this at the same time
I love that.
as you enjoy what you're doing?
This just came to mind now. We have Chino Achebe, we have Wole Soyinka, we have Chimamanda Adichie. Are we seeing another?
No, we have so many. We have so many great writers that.
No, I mean in you. Like, are we seeing another?
If I can tell my story in the way they've done, then I mean, it's that's the dream come true.
But I'm adding Professor Chigbo on the list. Okay. So, are you ready for the game?
Yeah.
Okay. I will walk you through the rule first. So I have these 3 cups. I have questions in each of the cups, as you can see. So you're going to roll this ball. Whichever cup you hit will be the question that you're going to answer. And you have 3 trials. Okay. For ladies, I usually assign 4. So. Okay.
Yay.
There you go.
So what if I missed the 3 trials? I won't have questions.
Well, we can, consult stakeholders and see what we do. Okay. So let's do it here. Prof, the first question here is, who is your role model?
I mentioned my mom earlier and Professor Anyadike as well. But I think my grandma is actually a stronger role model for me because her story is so powerful and unique, and she's the strongest person I know. So my grandma is my role model. She survived the Biafran War, raising a family of over six. Six kids during the war, and running around with them, providing food, and none of them died.
Wow.
And managed to send all her kids to school. But beyond that, she was a woman married to 7 husbands, and she survived because she kept running away from them until she found the one that she wanted. So her stories is just unique. She's a huge inspiration. She's late now, but she lived for over 100 before she died.
Wow. That's interesting. Okay, so the second question is if Prof is not in Canada and Nigeria, where would Prof like to be?
I went to Rwanda a few years ago, and it was so lovely. I think it was the best country I visited so far.
Oh,
So I think I was in Huye as well as Kigali. I would like to go back to Rwanda, but broadly I want to visit many African countries. In fact, I want to visit every single African country there is. That's my hope, that I will be able to do that one day.
interesting. Okay, so what's Prof's favorite Canadian food?
Canadian food. They don't have food. Canada does not have food. Because I've asked Canadians actually what's Canadian food, and they themselves were confused because it's maybe they'll mention poutine and a couple of other things, but they are not really food like that. But I like steak. Here, that's not quintessentially Canadian, but it's not something you eat in Nigeria the way it's made here. So steak is my favorite stuff. If I go to restaurants, it's steak mainly.
And Nigerian favorite food?
Oh, plantain and fried egg.
Oh, really?
Fried plantain and I
That's
don't stop eating it. So, not jollof rice, and I love my favorite at home is ora soup and
now you're mentioning
fufu.
Nigerian food.
But plantain and egg, oh my goodness! I can't
Really?
just, if you wake me up 2 a.m. 3 a.m. I will eat it. So.
That's interesting to know. That's interesting to know. When you mentioned ora soup, I was like, that's the real.
That's what my mom will make for me. If I'm coming home, my mom will make ora soup and swallow. Maybe fufu or eba, gari. But apart from that, it's plantain and egg.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, the final one, Prof. If there is one thing you would like to change on Earth, what would that be?
That's a terrific question. I think it's the way we imagine things. I think it's the human imagination, actually. It would be to change how we imagine things, imagine relationships, to affect our imagination to believe we are one, and that we don't need all the kinds of things we need in order to survive. So it's to reorient our imagination to more ethical relationships with others. There's no reason why some parts of the world will be rich and some others are not. Why we can't solve the problem of malaria, but we are going to space, right? Why people are so
That's
hungry, and some people are, exploring deep waters and going to look at lost shipwrecked things under the oceans and so on. So it doesn't make any sense. It comes from how we've come to imagine this world, because sometimes what we imagine as comfort is because some other people don't have. So we are happy that we have what people don't have. It comes from how we desire things, and that's terrible. It's very unethical way of imagining the world. So yeah, if I can change that, then I've done God's work.
Fantastic. I really love this, honestly. Thank you so much, Prof. On this note, I would like to appreciate your making our time to be here. I'm sure in the future would have this opportunity again. I appreciate.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah.